Welcome to video 2 of Ms. McKean's tips and tricks for finals. So as a review, I made a comprehensive plan for keys to effective final studying. I've broken it down into 3 steps. Video number 1 was about how to organize your studying. So what is your schedule? This is video 2, which is how do you now determine what to study when you're trying to review a whole semester's worth of a class times how many finals you have to prep for. And then video 3 will go into how to study that material once you have determined what you need to study. So video 1 was about knowing the schedule for finals, knowing the tests that you're taking. Today what I'll do, or not today, but in this video I will go over what you know and don't know, figuring out the big picture, and also reflecting on what you've been assessed on already. Video 3, which will go over how to make it stick when you're trying to memorize a lot of content, knowing the step-by-step processes, and last but not least, knowing what's helpful to you. So if you need to go back to video 1 for the organization, feel free to, or if you know what you need to study, go ahead, skip ahead to video 3, or continue on with me for video 2, how to know what to study. There is just no way that you can study 100% for all of your finals because it's usually a semester's worth of information. Multiply that by the number of finals that you have, and we have a finite amount of time. Therefore, this video will go over how do you figure out to use your time efficiently to study what you need to study and not waste your time on what you don't need to study. The first is determine what you know and don't know. Now, if you have a study guide, which in video 1 we went over on figuring out which classes do I have a study guide for. If you have a study guide, these are going to be my tips for how to effectively fill out a study guide. A lot of the time students just fill it out haphazardly, sometimes copying from other people, and therefore it's not done meaningfully. This is how you can meaningfully fill out a study guide. First, in a normal pencil, black pen, go ahead and answer all the questions you can answer without looking in your textbook at your notes or asking a friend. This might be skipping over a lot. This might be filling out a lot. And this is a part of the process for you to determine, wow, I couldn't answer almost anything, which means I have a lot to study. Or, dang, I totally got this. I answered so many questions on my own. So this is the first step. The second step is going to require a different color. If you've ever had me as a teacher, you know that color coding is my jam. So what you want to do is take out that second color and now answer questions you need help with. Now you might be going to your friends for help, your textbook, your notes, whatever it may be. But why do it in a different color? Because now these answers are going to pop out at you. It's going to stick out to you. I did not know this, and this is what I need to study. As opposed to what you filled out before in the first step with a pencil or black pen, not going to stick out as much. And guess what? You don't need to waste your time studying that stuff because you already know it and have it committed to memory. The third step is then with the questions that you didn't know and had to look for some help. Then what you're going to do is you're going to study those questions. I really suggest making flashcards or a Quizlet. This way it's instant review, especially if you have Quizlet on your phone. It's a really quick and easy way to study. And it'll sort the questions for you as well. You can star the ones you don't know and filter out the ones that you do know. So you're minimizing your studying as you go on. So this is how to determine what you know and don't know if you have a study guide. Now, what if you do if you have a teacher that did not give you a study guide, like if you're in my IB history class? So what you need to do is start off with a brain dump. If you don't have a study guide, this is because your teacher has probably provided you many different routes with which to prepare. So for example, I don't provide one for IB history because I've given my students ample techniques on how to study, giving them the bigger picture for how they can break it down. And so many of them could create their own study guide. So the first thing you have to do is brain dump. And this is going to be really important, an important skill for when you get to college, because colleges don't often give study guides. So first is brain dump. Think, what is everything that I know? And again, you want to do this in a very simple monotone color, pencil or black pen. What is all the info you know I need to know, the vocabulary terms, the formulas, whatever it might be. Now, what I suggest, for example, for my IB history students is they have topics and bullets that they study from provided for IB. So that's what we start with. That's the big picture. And then that's a way to help organize. Then what you want to do is revise that brain dump in a different color. Again, that color coding is important. You are now going to add the info that you didn't get. This could be from your notes, from your textbook, from a friend. This is the stuff that you did not know off the top of your head, and this is the stuff that you need to study. And you wrote it in a different color so that it pops out at you as something you need to study for. I'm going to show you guys an example of this on the next slide. Then you are going to want to study what you don't know. Use that time efficiently by making Quizlets or flashcards. So here are some examples from my IB history class. This is a topic 10 review. It's broken down into 6 bullets that I provided for my students. They then went through, had 5 minutes to brain dump in pencil or a black pen all the terms that they immediately knew. They then went through, shared with a partner or a group, and wrote that in a different color to stick out at them. Then we did an overall class review. So now this is a layered brain dump. So this student doesn't need to study the stuff that is in the pencil because she knew it off the top of her head without any help. She'll need to study the stuff that's in a different color that pops out, and especially the stuff that she's highlighted, because that's cueing to her, I really didn't remember this, and I know that this is important. So this is an effective way to create a study guide for yourself. You could also, if you're a fan of study groups, turn it into a fun game. So one game I play in my IB history class is a big brain dump game. Now, this is pretty sloppy, and trust me, their handwriting's typically better than this. But what it was I gave one person at a time from each team 15 seconds to go up and write as many terms that they remembered, their brain dump. And then the next team got to send up an individual that had 15 seconds. They could not repeat. They had to challenge themselves and think beyond what was already on the board. And so we were able to amass this big and very aesthetically pleasing board of terms that we all needed to study and know. And this can be fun, done on a whiteboard, done on a piece of paper with your friends. Another thing is, it's kind of tough to remember all of this type of stuff. So one thing I encourage my students to do is build connections, thinking, what does this term make me think of? And how does that term connect to something else? And how does it connect? And the next thing you know, you've found a way to memorize more content. So this is a game that I call Connections from Point A to Point B. I'll typically give my students the first term and the 5th term, and they have to fill in the middle parts. How can we get from point A to point B? Challenges you to remember content and helps you figure out ways to remember it. Now moving on. It's important to know the big picture. Most often than not, teachers are taught to prepare tests with the big picture. What is the bigger theme? For example, with IB, it's those topics and those bullets, and then we scaffold down and build down to the more specifics. So this is what you can do that can be very effective as a way to prepare for finals and create a study guide. So what you're going to do is summarize the essential content and skills that you need. What are the most pertinent things you need to know for your finals that you will probably be tested on? How are you going to do this? You're going to start with the big ideas. What are those bigger themes? If you're in an MYP course, you have a statement of inquiry. You might have an essential question in an English class. And then you build out to the specificity, which is what I have my students do in the brain dump that I showed a few slides previously. This will help you see those bigger connections, and if you can remember the big ideas, it'll build out. You want to create this however you want to. I have students who think very linearly and need to make it into a chart. I have students who just want to get it down on paper. I have students who create images out of things that those images then help them create it. And I'm going to have examples on the next few slides for you. One study tip I suggest, and I did this when I was in college, was after I finished making a one-pager, I would flip it over, try to recreate the whole thing from memory until I had it memorized. I did this for the classes that I really needed to memorize for. So here are some examples. For chem, they've listed off ions, they've listed off different things that they need to remember for chem, but it's all in one paper as a way that they've now taken the time to figure out, what do I need to know and what do I need to study? And now they also have a master sheet that's going to help them out when they need to study. For math, it's probably just going to be a bunch of formulas. Maybe you want to include problems that you really struggled with in class and writing them down. And then you can also highlight the parts of it that you really need to memorize and that you were like, oh, that's my aha moment. For English, maybe you're going to have to write an essay about a book that you read. So fill it out with a plot chart. What are those bigger themes? What do I need to remember? And then this is a history example. Time is very important in history, so she's created a timeline. She has bigger themes. She's using symbols to help her remember, clever ways for her to remember things all in one place. The process of making these is your review and it is your studying. And also, now you've saved yourself the time by putting all the most important information into one spot. Another way you can think about it is reorganizing the information. So maybe instead of organizing it the way your teacher did, you can organize it into different categories. This is helping you to really process the information because you're forcing yourself to categorize it. And it's also helping you remember it in a different way. So as opposed to the one pager for history that was on the previous page of timeline, important terms, etc., this is now organized into operations, battles, turning points, because this is going to be very important for historical studying for World War II. So those are some different ideas. If you want to run by different categorical ways to study, just shoot me an email at lagoonamazing@gmail.com. Last but not least, use your previous quizzes and tests from this semester. So if your teacher has told you this is a comprehensive test from the whole semester, use what they've already tested you on. They might recycle questions. So in a similar process of what we did with the study guide, what you want to do is go through and correct the questions you got wrong. Do this in a different color than what you initially wrote in and in what your teacher corrected in. It'll pop out at you. These answers will stick out to you. Then, just because you got a question correct on a test or a quiz does not mean that you know it. It could be a lucky guess. It could have been, I really knew it then, but I have no clue how I got that right now. So it's going to be important to recognize those questions. Highlight the questions you got right, but were difficult, you guessed on, or you really just don't even remember. Then, from those ones that you've corrected in a different color that you've highlighted, you are then going to study. You could take these, turn it into a Quizlet, turn it into flashcards, or turn it into a one-pager. You are figuring out what you need to study and putting it in a master sheet that you can then refer to very, very, very quickly. These are my tips on how to figure out what you need to study for finals to be more efficient. If you have questions, please email at lagoonamazing@gmail.com. Or if you follow the Instagram or the Remind 101, you can go ahead and message me there. Good luck.